What's up guys, Jameson Brandon here, and I wanted to shoot this video for so long, and now I'm finally doing it. I got time, so let's talk about this. I want to talk to you about and share with you some of the big things that we learned off of losing $100,000 with one of my companies. Now, this wasn't $100,000 in a year, this is $100,000 like in a month. And there's some big things that came out of this that I want to share, because no matter what size business you're running, how many businesses you have, whatever you got going on, some of this is, I believe, applicable to anybody, any situation that they've got going on right now. As long as you're an entrepreneur out there growing, this stuff is for you. So tune in and let's do this. Before we dive in, I want to note that you can look at failure as feedback, or you can look at it as this devastational thing that just completely debilitates you and puts you off on the sidelines, takes you out of the game completely. That is a personal choice. So the best example I have of this, there's geniuses of the past that they would use failure as feedback, and the best example I have is Nikola Tesla. He used to create these mental models in his mind where he would take a piece of machinery. He was actually hired to do this by a lot of companies, and this is how he advanced machinery so much. But he'd create this little mental movie of the machine and almost run the machine in his mind, and he would just let it go and just push it off to the back, and he'd check in on it from time to time. And he was actually able to determine when things would break and what pieces and components of the machinery would break, which just sounds absolutely insane to most people. But he had a very different viewpoint on failure or breaking or something, not working anymore. He looked at it as feedback. Okay, what are the crucial pieces that broke? Why did they break? How can we fix them? How can we make them last longer? Those are the sorts of questions that would come out of ultimately failure. And I operate in a much similar way. So if I just look at how I respond now to failure and big loss and devastational things happening today versus how I reacted 2-3 years ago, and it's a night and day difference. 2-3 years ago, if something like that were to happen, it'd take me out of the game for a year, maybe even longer. Whereas now, this happened in November, and here we are in March, and I'm kind of over it. First off, let's start at the very top, which I kind of just alluded to, but failure is what you make of it. So if you want this to take you out of the game, if you want to sit there and guilt yourself and, oh my God, this is why I shouldn't be in business, and oh my God, this is why I shouldn't do this, and they were right, I should go back to school, and I should get a job, and I should work for somebody else, and I got in over my head, no matter what you say to yourself up here, you're right. So you ultimately have to decide, how long am I going to allow this loss, this failure to take me out of the game and push me off on the sidelines and just sit and watch everybody else living their dreams, everybody else accomplishing what they want to do, taking one step forward. And you'll sit on the sidelines, just fully surrender to it, and eventually you get sick of it and you got to get back in the game and play again, just like anything else. This is true for a big loss. And this is also true for a big win. If you had all the money in the world, people think gosh, nobody would want to work. That's not true at all. You'd get bored of not working after a certain amount of time, and you'd be inspired to create again. So it's the same thing with both ends, dramatic ends of the spectrum, extreme loss and extreme win. So the next thing I want to talk about is nobody outside of you, who's the visionary, who's the one creating it, is going to be as passionate as you. So don't expect them to be. Don't expect them to be as crazy as you are with it. They see you being crazy committed. They see you being all in on this, but they're never going to be at that same level. Not even close. And so don't expect or assume that the people around you will go to the same lengths that you will with whatever it is that you're doing, with the business that you're building, with the product that you're releasing, with the service that you're offering. Doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to be as crazy and as committed as you are, because you created it. It's your baby. Okay, next, when you're bringing on team members and you're building out this crew and this team, take your time. Don't rush this. I've done this a few times now. This is a reoccurring pattern for me, is we're rushing the process of bringing on team members, assistants, employees, 1099s, developers, whatever it is. You don't need to rush it. Sometimes slow is fast, because slow done right makes you fast over the long run. Whereas if I run out and try and go fast, hit a wall, have to fire them, hire somebody new, all that drama and trauma through the process is going to take even longer than just going a little slower, making sure they're right, walking them through the paces, testing them. I firmly believe in shit testing somebody, especially the closer they get to you as the owner, as the CEO, as the founder. They need to be tested even more. And they know it. Like, and I'm upfront, and I tell them straight up, like, this is just going to be a series of tests over the next 30 days, 60 days, whatever. Because, like, I got to know how much I can really trust them with. And obviously, we got to build a pretty intimate relationship if they're going to start taking over key pieces of business. And so, again, I'm not an expert in this space. I'm learning still myself, but I definitely know from experience that you can't rush the process of bringing somebody on. No matter how intuitively they might feel good, to bring them on, and your gut feeling about this person, still need to run them through the paces. Still need to take your time with them. The next thing is that no matter what goes right and what goes wrong, the founder, the person who created this, the owner, whatever you want to label yourself as, like, the buck stops with you. Everybody else can have excuses. Everybody else can have their own bullshit and their own drama and their story. You cannot. You have to step up and say, okay, whoosh, clear all that out. I'm the guy who all this falls on. So if the whole thing falls apart, it all ultimately falls on you. And yes, there could be some very real pieces and very real players out there in the game that affected the loss. And those conversations need to be had with them as an individual, but collectively, all the weight still falls on you. And it's funny because right after it happened, I found myself with like that, within that first month, like kind of like trying to almost kick away some of the guilt and the blame. And then it kind of sunk in and digested, and I was just like, no, it's all on me. No matter what, it's all always on whoever was the founder, whoever made it, whoever created it. So all the weight, all the answers, all the people that are they're looking for somewhere, they're looking for the solution, they're looking for how am I going to get fixed in this situation. It all falls on whoever made it, whoever created it, so that founder. And so, in this situation, it was me, so I'd say for about the first month, I was still kind of kicking and screaming, kind of being a little bitch about it, trying to hide from my obligation of having the weight all falling on me. And then finally, it tipped over, and then I said, okay, it washed over me, and then I said, okay, this is me, this is on me. And so definitely, it was a great learning experience because, you get better at these things each time you have to deal with the hard losses and the things that really kick you in the dick. And so it becomes easier and easier to just fully surrender to that and say, okay, no, the weight all falls on me, the buck stops here, that sort of thing. And then you start to get aggressive and do your thing to fix it. That all ultimately falls on you. The next thing I want to talk about is giving yourself like a buffer, giving yourself padding and room to breathe. And this falls in both emotionally, team-wise, financially, everything wise. It falls into every single category of what you're doing. And we didn't do that. Like we ran so bootstrapped and so tight. I even pulled out some of my own personal finance money and cash to put into this thing to make it work. And it was too little too late. And it's still the whole thing completely fell apart and crumbled to the ground. And so that makes the mess and the cleanup even more when you hesitated and you didn't pull the trigger when you should have. And then you have the repercussions for that. So that rolls into the next one, which is you start to gain this over time. You look at people who run like really huge businesses like Donald Trump, and even though he's president now, you can't deny the fact that he's very, very good at running business. And you start to get good at like firing quickly. So making very quick, decisive action. And that's something that I'm getting better and better at every year, every scenario that comes up. You get very, very good at it over time, being able to make quick, decisive action. And so definitely there were some points when I didn't. I hesitated, even for like a couple hours of hesitation, 6, 12 hours a day. That sometimes is too much and it's already too late. So being able to stay resolute and stay in tune with like the real you, not being pulled or triggered by reactivity around you, staying whole, staying yourself, and then being able to make a clear, concise decision is very, very difficult in traumatic times. And that, I think, is one of the most important things that any great business person can learn is to definitely hone that skill of being clear and concise, even when the stress is high, even when there's so much riding on this, and there's so much pressure and tension, is to just stay stay with it, stay in it, and just kind of breathe through the experience. And so that was definitely a big one that I learned out of the whole thing as well. And then ultimately you have to decide like how you're going to rank this, how you want to talk about this, how you want to explain this to people, and how they want to remember it. Because how you talk about it and how you feel about this experience, whether it's a win or a loss, it definitely echoes around you, and everybody else who hears about this is going to respond in a certain way. And so you ultimately decide that. Like up until this video, there's like 5 people who knew about that. Not because I didn't want to talk about it, just because I wanted to be sure that I kind of grabbed all the lessons out of it. And 2, I wanted to be mostly through it, which we're about 75% through it. So I feel comfortable and confident now talking about it and really talking about the things that we learned along the way, versus me jumping right out of the gates right after it happened and talking about it wouldn't have been as impactful and powerful for you as it is today. The last thing I want to leave on this note is that, you know, we're living in a very interesting time right now. You have governments making massive mistakes on a daily basis. You know, they're borrowing money all day long that the taxpayers ultimately have to pay back. You have big corporations making mistake after mistake after mistake. You have something that takes 12 months to build, it takes 8 years to build and costs quadruple the budget. You have mistakes and kind of corporate ignorance and governmental ignorance happening everywhere. So don't let this thing that's happened to you weigh so heavy that it deters you from your dreams. It deters you from your focus, because ultimately it's a drop in a bucket. It's so small, and all it's really there to do is give you feedback. So let's look at what went right, the facts of the situation, just the facts, and what went wrong, and then that's it. How do we make change? How do we make the next one better? How do we make the next business better, the next service offering? How do we redefine and recreate ourselves as a business, as a brand, to be better based off of this? See, people ultimately, they're very forgiving when it comes to like somebody making a mistake, because we all make mistakes. But when you try and hide it, when you ignore it, when you defend yourself too much against it, and you don't pick up those lessons and you go out and you just keep doing the same shit over and over again, that's when people lose their patience. Because it's like, okay, make the mistakes, but learn from it. And so ultimately that's a very important thing that you need to do from these situations, because there will be failures. There will be epic fuck-ups. There will be times when you just light it all on fire and burn it to the fucking ground. And that's okay, as long as you're learning from that, redefining, you know, your guys' core values as a business, and making those changes and going and proving to the marketplace that you're a better business, that you've got a better offering than you did before. And ultimately, those are the things that we're working on with this company. And 2017 so far is a big year that we're taking a huge step forward in redefining how we offer, what we offer, and being able to provide that ultimate value to the marketplace so we can turn into the big brand that we want to be. And so yeah, that's some of the stuff that we learned from ultimately one of the worst losses that I've had so far in a business, especially in its first year. But yeah, so I hope that you learned something from that, you take something away from it. Feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Obviously smash that like button if you love the video, and drop a comment with maybe some storyline or something that's happened to you that you'd like to share with me. Share the video with friends and family, and be on the lookout for more videos in the future. Much love, my friends. See ya.